All right, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome everybody to the Kentucky Monthly Climate Perspective on Drought and Hydrologic Conditions for May of 2021. I'm Megan Shargorodsky and I will be your moderator today. And we will have presentations by Dr. Stuart Foster from the Kentucky Climate Center, and he is also the state climatologist. And we have Matt Dixon from the UK Ag Weather Center, who will be providing some of the agricultural impacts. And I'm going to go ahead and pass it on to you, Stu.
Thank you, Megan. I appreciate that. And welcome, everyone. So we have a slide here from our Mesonet site in Nicholas County. And you see the spring green up along with the April showers, and now we await the May flowers here. It's been an interesting month of weather, and we will summarize that and take a look at what might be coming down the pike here in just a moment. Our next webinar is scheduled for June 3rd, and as a heads up, Matt Dixon there with the UK Ag Weather Center will be the presenter next month. This webinar is presented in partnership with the National Integrated Drought Information System in coordination with the Midwest Drought Early Warning System. And as always, we greatly appreciate our partners who help to make this possible. Our Kentucky Drought and Hydrologic Impact Reporter is available if you have not access that up to this point. It's a product developed through the Kentucky Division of Water and hosted here at Western Kentucky University. So our outline, pretty much the same, but we've added a slide here at the beginning on the new climate normals, just a little bit of information, but the climate normals, which are our climatic averages, essentially, based on a 30-year window, were just recently updated and released this past Tuesday by the National Centers for Environmental Information. So the new climate normals represent the period 1991 to 2020. And again, they're updated every 10 years. So we'll take a look at that, and then we'll go through the recent conditions here in Kentucky: temperature, precip, soil, moisture, stream flow, flooding more so than drought has been a concern so far this year. Take a look at impacts that we've seen over the last month, and then move on to outlooks for the near term out to a seasonal perspective before we summarize and have time for questions and discussion. On the left, you see a couple images there that represent the extremes of the weather during the month. What we'll, as a precursor to what we'll see here and summarize, the last 30 days in many ways have averaged out to be rather uneventful. But if you break it down, instead of looking at an average and look at what actually happened over the course of the month, we had some very extreme weather conditions, including a very late season snowfall that produced up to 3 inches of snow in northern Kentucky. And near the end of the month, very heavy rains, or I shouldn't say near the end of the month, here in the first part of May, that produced very heavy rains in portions of the state, leading to some flash flooding and a lot of water standing in fields and such. So the 1991 to 2020 climate normals, again, there are a lot of products that are becoming available now, and we're just taking a look at one thing, and that's precipitation, because that's more the focus of this webinar series. We certainly knew that things had been getting wetter here in Kentucky. We've been talking about it for quite a while, and I know Matt has been talking about this theme as well. What we have here is a map in the upper right that is a comparison between the new climate normals and the old ones from 1981 to 2010, and we're looking at the percentage change in annual precipitation. And you can see the darker shaded areas in the green tones are emphasizing really two parts of the country, one of which is centered in Kentucky and the eastern half of Kentucky, where if you look at the scale there, you can see that for Kentucky, precipitation has increased on average, somewhere between, I'll say, 5 and 7% on average across the state, but some areas more than that, other areas a bit less. And again, that is based on the full year. And you can see that while Kentucky's really at the core of that, it's a pretty large region in the eastern part of the country running up through Appalachia, Appalachian region. And then in the lower left, you see the same type of map, but it's focusing on April, so it's a spring month, and then July on the right. So we're basically looking at the growing season. And again, what these maps show is what we have seen in the data, and that is that we are getting wetter throughout the year, but particularly in the spring months. And these are some pretty remarkable increases in terms of precipitation. And I say it's pretty impressive because, again, when you calculate the climate normals, they are averages based on a 30-year window that is moved along every 10 years. So that change includes 20 years in common between the two sets of climate normals. So all of that change is a result of dropping off the decade from 1981 to 1990, and then adding on 2011 to 2020. And in past talks, I've mentioned that that 3 of our 5 wettest years on record in Kentucky have occurred just in this last decade. So you can really see the impact of that in the spring months, but also into the summer months. So that tends to suggest that our exposure to drought risk during the growing season should be somewhat reduced as our climate gets wetter. But the key here is that these are averages and they don't reflect the variability that we can experience year to year. Now, taking a look at our recent conditions, this is precipitation totals over the last 30 days from April 6th to May 5th. You can see drier conditions in the southeast where totals are generally in the 2 to 4 inch range, and then trending a little bit above that as you move toward the northwest into the bluegrass area and such. And the heaviest amounts, highest totals in the yellow shaded areas, those are the radar estimates. And then the numbers there again are the observed mesonet observations. You can see in Barron County there, 9.48 looks to be the high total. There in Grayson County, 9 inches and such. So some areas received quite a bit of precipitation over the last 30 days, and a very significant component of that in those wettest areas occurred just a couple days ago, including nearly 6 inches of rain in Barron County within a 24-hour period. It's a very intense rainfall. We look at the 60-day totals, moving somewhat uniform in terms of the radar estimates. Got a large area in the 10 to 15 inch range over the western half of the state, a little bit less in the east. Totals over in the far west of Fulton County, 13.32 inches. A bit of a drier spot up along the Ohio River there from Crittenden County up to Henderson County area, where totals are less than 10 inches. in a low case of 7.6 inches there. But otherwise, no areas of the state that are extremely dry over that 60-day period. And then the 90-day totals, again, see a somewhat similar pattern where you got the heaviest amounts there in the western half. And you see in the red, that's again really emphasizing the effect of that storm rainfall event that we had a couple days that added anywhere from 2.5 to, again, close to 6 inches of rainfall within some of those areas. If we look at those totals compared to normal over the last 30 days in the upper left, the greens and blues are areas that are above normal in terms of precipitation totals, with the blue areas running from 150 to 200% of normal. And then as you move to the southeastern portion of the state, you see some more browns and yellows, and those areas have generally been below normal precipitation, down as much as only 50% of normal or so in a pretty significant area over the last 30 days. And then for the 60-day period on the upper right, you see larger areas in the western half that are above normal precipitation for the state. And you still see those areas in the eastern half, in this case more toward the northeast, that have been a little bit drier. But that dryness is generally 75% or more of normal precipitation. So there's no extreme dryness in that 60-day period. And then the 90-day period shows even wetter conditions over a large portion of the state, with again, totals upward of 200%, approaching that in some areas. But there is that one spot that we mentioned last month, but it continues to be there in western Kentucky, up there along the Ohio River, where there's a small area that has been generally a little bit below normal precip wise for that entire period. Again, not extremely dry, but somewhat remarkable in the sense that most areas around there have been above normal, and that area of dryness has persisted throughout that extended period. But you will notice if you look beyond Kentucky to the north into Illinois, Indiana, that there is some dryness there, and we'll see that here in a moment when we look at the U.S. Drought Monitor. Temperature departures are important here. This past month, average high temperatures were just a little bit below normal, anywhere from about normal to as much as 2 degrees below normal on the highs, while the average low temperatures were just very, very close to normal for this time of year. So the key there, while it's been some areas a little bit below normal in terms of precipitation, that we haven't had really hot temperatures that might dry out the soil at a very rapid pace. And so when we look at soil moisture and groundwater, soil moisture percentiles on the left, we see a little bit of green there in the western half of Kentucky, indicating that soil moisture rankings are a bit above average for this time of year. And on the right side, complementary indicator of groundwater, shallow groundwater, again, some blues there in the state for the most part, a tiny bit of yellow and brown. But for the most part, we're right around normal to a little wetter than normal. And looking at soil moisture measurements, we swapped out a few of the stations since we had identified some areas of the state that had been a little bit drier. The maps or the graphs on the top row there from Webster County and Henderson County are that part of that area that's tended to miss out on some of the rains. You can see in those areas that soil moisture has nonetheless stayed pretty strong. Particularly so in Webster County, there's been just a slight dip, maybe there in the 2 and 4 inch totals, but they've rebounded here over the last week with recent rainfalls. The 20-inch total, which is going to be less volatile in terms of moving up and down, has dropped just a little bit, but again, soil moisture is in pretty good shape there. On the right side, you can see Henderson, which has been, again, a drier spot. And you can see there at the 2 and 4 inch levels and even the 8 inch levels that there's a definite signal where we were drying out through much of April. But recent rainfall has brought those back in the positive direction. So again, we were starting to see some dryness there, but it's not significant per se. Excuse me, let's go back just a second, Megan. Yeah, and the other two slides there, Lincoln County, again, the southeastern part of the state, there is some dryness there. You can see a little bit of dryness there at the upper levels of the soil, but not significantly at the 20-inch depth. And then on the right, Pulaski County, a little dip at the 4-inch level, but otherwise holding in there very well for this time of year. Again, we've had relatively cool weather, so we have not had a lot of evapotranspiration at this point. And we see that here in this slide. Our normal source of the EDI, Evaporative Demand Drought Index, was not available to us this month. We're going to look into try to see what's happening, whether that's going to be coming back or not. But we're able to find the same information from a different source. So you can see here, Kentucky, you maybe have to look a little bit and you have to know where on the map to look for it. But on the 1 week EDI, there's a tiny little sliver of blue there, and we're close to a tiny little patch of yellow. But the EDDI over the last week has been very close to normal. And then on the right side, there's a little bit larger patch of blue that occupies Kentucky. And that reflects that over the last month, we really have seen below average evaporative demand. Again, largely we've had pretty cool weather here in Kentucky. 7-day average stream flows. These will be bouncing around here with the recent rains, but we've got some above normal to much above normal values there in the Green River Basin where a lot of that rainfall fell. And as we go to southeastern Kentucky, you can see some of the evidence of the dryness that had been developing in that part of the state. There we've got several locations that are running below normal. "28-day averages, those below normal flows in the eastern part of the state show up, including some much below normal. So that's pretty remarkable if you think back to the end of February when we had extensive flooding in eastern Kentucky and including the Kentucky River. So it shows how quickly conditions can shift, and in some sense then highlights the drought vulnerability of eastern Kentucky, given that we get most of our drinking water and water that we use from surface sources. You can see how quickly those conditions can change when you get to the headwater areas in the mountains of eastern Kentucky. Current flooding conditions, just one red dot there on the Green River, and then a little bit of minor flooding elsewhere along the Green River. Those conditions again resulting just from the last couple days of rain. Moving on to the U.S. Drought Monitor, updated there on May 4th. We can see just a hint of dryness in Kentucky. It's that one small area that we talked about earlier that had generally been missing out on the rainfall. Again, not totally, and it's just in the abnormally dry category. It's important to emphasize that abnormally dry does not indicate drought. It's simply an advance notice that we need to be paying attention to conditions. Otherwise, we could see the abnormally dry conditions across portions of Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio to our north, and then some moderate drought as you go farther north into Michigan and Iowa and parts of Wisconsin and such. So we do have some drought in the region, but it's removed a bit to our north. And then there is some dryness there on the southeast coast in the Carolinas. But all in all, very, very little to be concerned about at present. And the next map will show us how those conditions have been changing over the last 30 days. You can see that the abnormally dry category has been just recently added to our north there in parts of the Midwest. So those conditions have been deteriorating. Again, we were starting to get dry in April, but the recent rains have really impacted that trend. Impact-wise, again, we didn't have a lot of active weather over the last month, but when it happened, it was certainly significant or noteworthy. Included a period there on April 8th and 9th with reports of up to quarter-size hail in counties in the southeastern part of the state. So would anticipate that that's the size of hail that could cause some damage to vehicles, perhaps to roofs and such. And then on the 21st of April, we had the late season snowfall. In some areas, it was the latest snow since 1910, so over more than 100 years. And for those that might be interested, the record latest snowfall in Kentucky, if my memory is correct here, is May 20th, 1894, May 20th. So we still had a whole month to go, basically, to be able to beat that record. So let's hope that record stands for quite a while. And then again, just over the last few days here, we had some very intense storms, produced intense rainfalls, flash flooding, lots of roads being closed, traffic disrupted, and had produced some tornadoes, mainly in the Jackson Purchase area, Fulton County, Hickman County, Graves County area, but also one on the 3rd in Monroe County there on the along the Tennessee line, in Tompkinsville, for whatever reason, seems to be a favored area for tornadoes. So none of them particularly strong, but they did cause trees to be downed and damaged or destroyed some buildings. One home I know was destroyed, and so some pretty extensive damage from that. And there's also wind damage along with that storm system too. So I'll send it back to you, Megan, and we'll go up the road to Matt.
All right, thanks, Stu. Now we will bring on Matt Dixon with the UK Ag Weather Center.
So, hey guys, just to start off, USDA NASS, they started producing their weekly crop progress and condition reports for the growing season at the start of April. The table at the top was taken from the crop report this past Monday on, May 3rd. Looking at this table initially, Kentucky is in pretty good shape right now. 61% of corn is planted, well ahead of the 5-year average at this point in the season at 45%. Beans are in the same boat, 26% planted and well ahead of the average at this time of year at 10%. All this coming from somewhat drier conditions over the first half of the month. Something that is running a bit behind, but not all that of a surprise, is the development of winter wheat. 38% of the crop has now reached the heading stage, behind the 5-year average of 54%. Looking at crop conditions, running well across the board, with most of the crops predominantly in the good to excellent categories right now. Specifically looking at the wheat crop, this is particularly good news looking at the condition of the crop right now, with a couple of freeze events we had earlier in the month. So you can see the first freeze event below, and lows dipped into the low to middle 20s for many across the state. Very cold night for the bluegrass state. If we can go to the next slide, we'll talk about impacts from this event. Thanks, Megan. So we started the month of April with several days of unseasonably cool temperatures in place, delaying planting for the most part. The map on the previous slide was just from the morning of the 2nd. We had 2 other cold mornings on the morning of April 1st and April 3rd. After this event, I compiled a list of several NWS and Kentucky measurement stations across the state and the duration of hours below 32 degrees and 24 degrees. Looking at the table, the concern was with the number of hours below 24, as many winter wheat fields across Kentucky had reached the jointing stage. And 24 degrees is really whenever we start looking for damage associated with the jointing stage. So there were some reports of freeze damage across Kentucky, but it ended up not being too bad compared to 2020. The latest crop report said only 2% of the wheat crop sustained moderate damage, 17% light, and 81% was reported as having no damage. I've been talking with Dr. Carrie Knott, grain specialist with UK recently, and we are looking more into this freeze damage. Some areas like Princeton saw damage even though temperatures didn't get below 24 degrees for 2 hours or more. So the thinking is there may be more factors at play. We're going to look at soil temperatures, relative humidity, and wind speed. So we'll see what we find and get back to you. But ultimately, I think we were lucky in the sense that we didn't see the warmer temperatures in late winter and early spring in 2021 compared to previous years, which really sped up wheat and fruit development. The crop report also pointed out a little higher numbers and damage for alfalfa, but overall, again, it wasn't too bad. Dr. Ray Smith, he's a forage specialist with UK. He said most forage crops made it through the event all right. He mentioned alfalfa was fairly cold tolerant at the time with previously cool weeks in place. So apples, pears, and peaches also took a hit. Something we thought would happen, but once again, nothing like 2020. And specialists still believe we'll have a full crop for the most part. Daniel Becker, he's a UK Extension Associate from Princeton, but he put in the latest edition of Fruit Facts that we dodged a bullet. Peaches were in full bloom at the time, along with some early blooming apples and cherries. He mentioned in the article that he saw a pretty high survival rate for peach blooms at 66% on April 5th. Apples and blueberries also fared well. Cherries, not so much, but it depended if it was a earlier or later flowering cherry. Cherries that bloomed a little later are in much better shape. He shows a picture of those cherries below. Earlier blooming cherries on the left and later flowering cherries on the right. So as long as you covered strawberries and any warm season vegetables, they should have turned out all right with this event. So Megan, if we can go to the next slide, please, that'd be great. Cool. So following this freeze, grain crops really started going into the ground with some warmth in place and dry conditions, but then we saw some additional cool temperatures on the 21st and 22nd. Luckily, the bigger grain-producing counties avoid the low temperatures in the 20s. The map on the right shows lows on the morning of April 22nd and low temperatures in the 20s, mainly across eastern Kentucky. Western Kentucky was a bit cooler on the morning of the 21st, but once again, they stayed predominantly in the low 30s at that time. Minimum soil temperatures for the event stayed in the middle 40s to low 50s for the most part, some low 40s in some locations, but there was also some concern with the snow and the cooler water seeping into the soil. I took a picture in the upper left-hand corner of the snow close to my house on the morning of the 21st. Definitely something you don't typically see in the middle of April. I think I measured 1.5 inches at my house on my truck and table outside, but quite a bit for that time of year. But just in the middle of April, it was gone in a matter of hours. So Dr. Chad Lee showed some beans that were planted on April 19th on the day of that snowfall. In the end, I think we lucked out for the most part. I talked to several county agents over the past couple days, and most mentioned they made it through the cold all right. I believe most crops were still under the soil surface at that point. Saying that, the concern is now, and this is what I heard from quite a few county agents, the concern is now with all these flooded fields across the western half of the state. While the cold may not have been as impactful, I put a map there in the lower right-hand corner showing radar-derived precip estimates across the state. Stu talked a bit about this rain earlier, but many there in south central Kentucky saw 4, 5, 6+ inches of rain and falling in a very short period of time, and numerous reports of flash flooding, so on and so forth. And I know Daryl Simpson, he's an A&R agent in Muhlenberg County. He told me yesterday that water was still coming up in some of his fields, and he had roughly 15 acres of ground underwater. So bottom line, there's going to be quite a bit of ground that will need replanted. Hearing similar info from other county agents in the area and out into western Kentucky. So just to close out, while planning is running well ahead of normal, according to the crop report, look for those numbers to take a step back. Data from our website, the UK Ag Weather Center, shows the state averaged 2.68 inches over the past 7 days. That's about 1.5 inches above normal. That average spikes to over 3 inches for the major grain-producing counties of western and central Kentucky. Unfortunately, as Stu is going to show in a bit, we have a lot more rain on the way this weekend. So overall, I would expect planting progress to really slow down tremendously. And obviously, this will also have an impact on finding a solid 4 to 5 day window to harvest the first cut of hay in the upcoming weeks if this wet pattern sticks around. So all in all, talking with agents across the state, we are on the lookout for the next dry window across the area. So that's what I have, guys, and I'll send it back to you, Megan. So.
Great, thanks, Matt. Now we will move on to the outlooks and have Stu come back on.
All right, thanks, Megan. Thanks, Matt. As you mentioned, Matt, the 7-day quantitative precipitation forecast hints at quite a bit more rain to be coming our way on some already saturated soils and water standing in fields, as Matt mentioned. So we're looking at upwards of 2 toward 2.5 inches of rain possible over most of the state within the next 7 days. And again, this coming weekend is sort of the bullseye that we're looking at. Six to 10 day outlook, there's a lot of dark blue in the eastern part of the country that extends down across Kentucky, indicating that there's a very, very strong probability that our temperatures will run below normal over the coming period. And again, that's really just a continuation of the situation that we have outside right now. And then on the right side, about equal chances of above, near, or below normal precipitation. We're right in between at the area of wetter conditions being expected to our south and drier conditions anticipated to the north. That same area that's already showing up on the U.S. Drought Monitor as abnormally dry. And the 8 to 14 day outlook, we continue to see some blue shading, lighter blue. So the confidence in below normal temperatures in that 8 to 14 day window is a little bit less, but nonetheless elevated over a large portion of the eastern half of the United States. So the outlook or discussion there, the forecast discussion, hints that the models are starting to downplay a little bit of that coolness. So that pattern that's producing that looks like it may start to break down as we get toward the end of that 2-week period, and possible that that will get adjusted a little bit warmer. We'll just have to wait and see. And then on the right-hand side, slightly elevated likelihood of above normal precipitation for Kentucky, but that's within a pretty large region of the country that anticipates an enhanced likelihood of wetter than normal conditions. So that's very much associated with a troughing pattern in the jet stream that's allowing that colder air to filter down this way, but also puts us in the path of the storm tracks that could bring more moisture our way. So the outlook for the entire month suggests equal chances to a very slightly enhanced likelihood of above normal temperatures. And I suspect that this was updated at the end of April, so it's pretty recent. But in order for this outlook to pan out, we would anticipate a return to norm or warmer conditions as we get into the second half of the month. And that's certainly quite likely if the troughing breaks down, and we may shift back to more of a ridging pattern that would bring warmer temperatures. And then precipitation wise, again, we're in an area that's really kind of centered across Kentucky, but represents a large portion of the eastern part of the country that shows about a 40% or more likelihood of being above normal precipitation wise. The La Nina circulation has been hanging on a little bit, but it is anticipated that we will return to neutral conditions probably sometime this month. So it's really an imminent shift back to a neutral circulation pattern. And in part of the forecast discussion, there's an attribution that this kind of shift that we're seeing back toward neutral conditions is partly responsible or tied to the weather that we're seeing. So expect to be neutral, and then there's a possibility that we could return to La Nina circulation pattern later in the year, but as you can see on the lower right, the blue bars start to rise back up as we get later on, but they remain at this point below 50%. So we're about equal chances of being neutral or a La Nina circulation, but we'll have a lot of time to see how that plays out between now and the fall. And this is probably the last month that we'll look at these. Again, the INSO signals for Kentucky as we get out of the winter months and spring months start to weaken. So for the second row there, the April, May, June pattern, there's still a slight tendency to be a little drier there than normal. And again, as we move forward, the differentiation between La Nina and El Nino certainly weakened. And temperature impacts, again, for La Nina, April, May, June, tend to be a little bit cooler than when we're in a neutral phase. And again, we're likely to be moving into that neutral phase very soon. Seasonal outlook for the period May through July, we have a strong likelihood of being above normal temperature-wise, and that's over 50%. And precipitation-wise, we have from equal chances in the far west to more than 40% likelihood of being above normal precipitation wise in the eastern part of the state. So again, it's important to note that, that these probabilities are based on climate normals. And as we talked earlier, the climate normals are in the process of being updated. So I'm really not sure, need to talk to some people and find out how those new normals will be incorporated into these products. You know, if they incorporate them and just flip a switch, then it would suggest that there could be some you know, quick changes, significant changes in some probabilities because of, again, just all at once dropping off 10-year period and adding a new one. So I'm not sure how they handle that situation. We'll try to find out a little bit. Monthly stream flow outlook from the Ohio River Forecast Center. Again, this came out in late April there on the 27th. This was prior to the intense precipitation event that we had over the last few days. And again, it's a really difficult task this time of year to make some of these outlooks because we had quickly switched from a period where we had an onset of dryness, as Matt was talking about, to extreme precipitation. But again, this outlook was calling for normal, generally normal stream flows across the state. And as we know at this point, we're a little bit elevated from that with the recent rains. Seasonal flood risk. Again, I think this represents some of the recent precipitation that we've seen that have elevated some of our stream flows with a significant amount of precipitation in the forecast on the short term and some elevated likelihoods of above normal precipitation going forward. But nonetheless, as we move into the summer months, we would anticipate that these levels of flood risk will likely decline. Fire potential outlook for May is in the normal category for us here in Kentucky and the region around us likewise. So to summarize, temperatures for the month were average slightly below normal, while precipitation was anywhere from about 50% to 200% of normal, but about half of the state was below normal and about half of it was above normal. So again, if you look at things in terms of averages, it was a rather uneventful month. But if you look at the actual weather that led to those averages, we had some very interesting things going on this past month. And that included the very late season snowfall on April 21st, along with the recent storms. So below normal temperatures expected to persist through the first half of May, while precipitation likely to be above normal. La Nina conditions expected to transition back to neutral here this month. So with that, I'll send it back to you, Megan, and we'll have an opportunity for any questions. I know we've had a pretty active chat room there during the presentation.
Yes, we definitely had a very active chat. We've been talking about cicadas and stream flow and wet conditions. So if any of you that have been involved in this chat conversation want to speak up, feel free. And otherwise, we'll give a few minutes for other questions and discussion.
Well, Megan, you can monitor there to see if any questions come in, but I would like to thank everyone for participating. This will be my last regularly scheduled seminar or webinar presentation, as I'll be stepping down and stepping into retirement here at the end of June. And so, as I mentioned before, Matt Dixon will be our presenter next month on the webinar for June. And then Chip Zimmer with the Kentucky Division of Water will be our presenter in July. Megan Shargorodsky, who's done an outstanding job as a moderator, has also taken on the role of assistant state climatologist recently, and will do certainly a very good job in terms of managing the webinar series here going forward. And thanks for the comment there, Steve. I appreciate that. And from Tom there likewise.
Yeah, I know everybody is going to miss you and your presentations and your insight to all of the climate knowledge that you have. So we will do our best to keep everything going, and I think that we'll do an okay job. I don't think that there are any other comments or questions. Matt sent along a University of Kentucky information on cicadas. I will include that whenever I email out following the webinar, just in case anyone's interested, because I know everybody is anxiously awaiting the grand cicada emergence of Brudex. So we will, let's see, I thought I saw somebody unmute. All right, so with that, we will plan on seeing you in June. And as I mentioned, I will email out all of the relevant information as we do every time. And if you ever need to reference the presentation, you can view it on the YouTube channel for the Kentucky Climate Center. And with that, thank you so much for being here, and we look forward to seeing you in June.